She smiles even though her stomach is in knots. He nods, even though every fiber of his body wants to say no. They both agree, again, to something that drains them, disrespects them, even quietly breaks them. Why? Because they don't want to disappoint. They don't want to upset. They don't want to be disliked. So they become what everyone else needs, and slowly, invisibly, they abandon what they need. This is people-pleasing. And on the surface, it looks kind, cooperative, empathetic. But underneath, it's a slow death, a self-erasure, a quiet, constant betrayal of one's own boundaries, identity, and soul. And the cost, though rarely spoken, is devastating. People-pleasing doesn't begin as a flaw. It begins as survival. It's the child who senses that love is conditional. That approval is earned through obedience. That safety lives in being agreeable, not authentic. And so, the child adapts. They smile when hurt. They laugh when nervous. They become the peacekeeper, the helper, the fixer. Their needs shrink. Their voice softens. Their truth gets buried under politeness and performance. And it works, for a while. Because people pleasers are praised. They're the easy ones, the selfless ones. They get applauded for being so accommodating, so flexible, so damn pleasant. But deep down, they're exhausted, resentful, and quietly disappearing. The hidden cost of people-pleasing isn't just burnout, it's loss of self. Every time you say yes when you mean no, a part of you dies. Not dramatically, not loudly, but slowly, like water dripping onto stone. You think you're keeping the peace, but you're declaring war on your own boundaries. You think you're being nice, but you're training others to ignore your truth. You think you're earning love, but you're building relationships based on performance, not reality. And the day will come, sooner than you expect, when your soul sends the bill. It will look like sudden anger, a breakdown, a mysterious illness, or a quiet, aching numbness. But make no mistake, that cost was accumulating all along. There's a story buried in every people-pleaser. Not one of weakness, but one of pain. A story where expressing truth once led to rejection, where setting a boundary once triggered abandonment, where saying no meant feeling unlovable. So the nervous system adapts. Stay agreeable equals stay safe. Stay needed equals stay wanted. But safety is not the same as authenticity. And being wanted for what you give isn't the same as being loved for who you are. Consider this. If your love is tied to your performance, is it really love? If your friendships rely on your compliance, are they really friendships? If your worth depends on how much you give, do you even know who you are when you stop giving? These are the haunting questions every recovering people-pleaser must face. And they're not easy, because most people-pleasers don't even realize they're doing it until it's too late. Until they're so far from their own center, they can't tell where their needs end and someone else's begin. If this message feels like something you've lived but never said out loud, hit subscribe. Not for more noise, but for more of what cuts through it. One of the darkest costs of people-pleasing is resentment. Not toward others, at first, but toward yourself. For saying yes when you wanted to scream no. For showing up when you needed to rest. For smiling through disrespect. For over-functioning, over-caring, over-apologizing. You start to feel like a ghost in your own life. Present, but not alive. And soon, that resentment leaks out. It poisons relationships, not because you're bad, but because you're breaking. Because people-pleasing isn't sustainable. It's emotional debt. And eventually, the interest rates will crush you. So why do we keep doing it? Because we were trained to. Society loves people-pleasers. Workplaces reward them. Families rely on them. Partners exploit them. You become the go-to person, the emotional first responder, the one who always answers the call, no matter the cost. And when you finally falter, when your body collapses, or your voice cracks, or your heart says, enough, they look at you like you're the problem. You've changed. You're not as easygoing as you used to be. What happened to you? What happened is, you woke up. You realize that peace built on self-abandonment isn't peace, it's quiet suffering. You realize that the cost of keeping others happy was your own happiness. There's a quote by Carl Jung that strikes like lightning. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But here's the catch. You can't become who you truly are while trying to keep everyone else comfortable. Authenticity and approval do not always walk hand in hand, and the person who values their truth will eventually face a crossroads. Disappoint others or disappoint yourself. And if you've spent a lifetime choosing the former, the shift will feel violent. Suddenly, you're not replying right away. You're setting limits. You're saying no without essays or explanations. You're letting people misunderstand you and sitting with the discomfort. And you feel guilty, so guilty, because your nervous system isn't used to boundaries, because your worth has been tied to others' comfort, because you think love requires sacrifice, even of your soul. But this guilt is not a sign you're doing something wrong. It's a sign you're doing something new. Recovery from people-pleasing begins with a brutal but beautiful truth. You will not be loved by everyone, and you never needed to be. Your job is not to be digestible to all. Your job is to be true, especially when it's inconvenient, especially when it costs you approval, especially when it scares you. Because that is the only love worth having. The love that meets you as you are, not as you perform. So what does it look like to break free? It looks like silence instead of instant answers. It looks like space instead of suffocating closeness. It looks like asking yourself, what do I need? Before asking others what they want. It's messy, it's awkward, it feels selfish. But selfishness is not the enemy. Self-neglect is. And if you don't advocate for your needs, don't expect anyone else to. Because people will take and take, not always out of malice, but out of habit. You've trained them that your yes is automatic. Now you must retrain them by making it intentional. To be clear, this is not about becoming cruel. It's about becoming clear. There is a world between selflessness and selfishness, and it's called self-respect. That's the world you must now inhabit, where boundaries are not walls, but gates, where no is not rejection, but direction, where peace is not paid for with self-betrayal, but earned through honesty. And the people who truly love you, they'll adapt. They'll respect the new language. They'll honor the you that no longer flinches at being misunderstood, because the cost of people-pleasing may be high. But the reward of authenticity? It's freedom. There comes a point when being liked is no longer enough, because being liked is cheap. It's transactional. It's conditional on how small you can make yourself for others, and eventually your soul gets tired of shrinking. People-pleasing is like living in a costume. You wear the face that fits the room. You speak the words that keep everyone calm. You rehearse your likability like it's a script, and you call it kindness. But behind the performance is a silent scream. When will it be my turn to be real? The truth is, the people-pleaser doesn't know how to be disliked. They don't know how to exist without managing the temperature in the room. They're not selfish. They're scared. Scared of rejection. Scared of conflict. Scared of losing a relationship they were never allowed to be honest in. But here's the radical truth. You can survive being misunderstood. You can survive being disliked. You can survive losing people who only loved your compliance. What you cannot survive, not without breaking, is betraying yourself every day to keep the peace. Freedom begins where performance ends. But that shift is brutal. When you stop people-pleasing, the world doesn't clap. It flinches. Some friends fade. Some partners complain. Some families guilt-trip you with emotional invoices they think you still owe. You'll hear, "You've changed. You're being difficult. You're not the same person anymore." And they're right, because the old version of you, the one who swallowed truth to keep others full, that version is gone. And in its place is someone dangerous. Not because you're cruel, but because you've become clear. Clarity is the death of manipulation. When you say no without flinching, the people who relied on your guilt, begin to panic. Because they weren't in love with you. They were in love with your compliance, your silence, your self-erasure. You were a mirror for their comfort. And when the mirror cracked, so did their illusion of control. But this is good, because the people who leave when you stop people-pleasing are the ones who were never loving you, only using you. This is the painful gift of truth. It reveals what flattery hides. So how do you rebuild after years of people-pleasing? Not by burning bridges in anger, but by lighting torches of self-respect. You start small. You pause before you answer. You ask yourself, is this a real yes or a fear of no? You begin to disappoint others, not out of spite, but out of alignment. You start speaking from your chest instead of your throat. You stop performing love and start living it. You stop asking for permission to exist in your full complexity, because the truth is, people-pleasing was never love. It was survival. And now, you choose something better: sovereignty. Let's talk about that word. Sovereignty. It's not about independence, it's about inner authority. Sovereignty means you govern yourself. Your yes means yes. Your no is complete. Your emotions are valid without external validation. Your energy is no longer on loan to anyone who demands it. This is where true confidence lives, not in how loud you are, but in how clear your energy becomes. A sovereign person doesn't need to explain their boundaries. They don't debate their worth. They don't shrink to fit the comfort zones of others. They simply are. And that quiet certainty, it terrifies people who benefited from your doubt. Here's the next test. Can you still be kind after you've become sovereign? Yes, but now it's real kindness, not transactional, not fueled by guilt, not driven by fear of being disliked. Real kindness says, I choose to give, not because I must, but because it aligns with who I am. There's no resentment in that, no martyrdom, no tally-keeping, because the sovereign person doesn't give from depletion, they give from overflow. But to get there, you must first learn to protect your cup. This part hurts. You will outgrow people. Not because they're bad, but because the version of you they connected with no longer exists. And it's not your job to dim yourself to make them feel comfortable. You were not born to be a permanent emotional caretaker. You were not born to be agreeable at the expense of truth. You were not born to die a slow death of approval. You were born to own yourself. And yes, owning yourself comes with consequences. You'll be called selfish, cold, too much, too distant. But better to be too much for them than too little for yourself. Reclaiming your identity after years of people-pleasing feels like betrayal. Not because you're betraying others, but because you were taught that your needs were dangerous. This is the conditioning you must now unlearn. That conflict is failure. That disagreement is rejection. That boundaries are rude. That no is mean. That love must cost you something. It doesn't. Real love respects your edges. Real love celebrates your voice. Real love doesn't require your erasure. Eventually, something beautiful happens. You stop apologizing for existing. You stop checking every word before you speak it. You stop walking on eggshells to protect others from your truth. You become a person who trusts your own reality. And from that reality, you attract people who see you, not for what you give, but for who you are. These are the people who don't flinch at your no, who hold space for your anger, who love you without performance. And for the first time, your relationships stop being contracts. They become connections rooted in honesty, in depth, in mutual sovereignty. Let's be honest, not everyone will come with you. Some people will fall away. Some will guilt you. Some will weaponize your past compliance. Let them. Because the space they leave behind, that's where your real self grows. Not the version crafted for approval, not the one trained for applause, the one who breathes freely, speaks openly, loves without sacrificing identity. That self is waiting. So if you're tired, not just physically but existentially tired, maybe it's not burnout. Maybe it's people-pleasing finally collapsing under its own weight. And maybe, just maybe, it's time. Time to grieve the version of you that kept everyone happy. Accept yourself. Time to walk away from conversations where your truth was too heavy. Time to stop begging for space and start taking it. Because you were never meant to be light enough for others to carry. You were meant to be rooted enough to carry yourself. And in that depth, in that grounded presence, your true power returns, quietly, firmly, permanently.